The third method to solve quadratics is called completing the square. Now, this is my least favorite method. It takes a lot of work to set up the way you need to. Frankly, it is not the most efficient way to solve it. However, it always works. So, completing the square has a bunch of steps. For what you need to know, you are going to get through step 4. Step 5 and step 6 are similar to what you did with square roots. So if you notice, it says take the square root of both sides, write the equation twice. That is what we did the other day with where it looked like parentheses squared equals a number, then you took the square root and so on. So if we can get to that point, we will be able to continue and solve completing the square or solve your quadratic that way. So first, let's say we have this function here, x squared plus 8x minus 10, and it asks you to find the solutions. So the first thing that we're going to do today is rearrange the equation so it's in the form of x squared plus bx equals the opposite of c. So how I'm going to do that, set it equal to 0, so equals 0. Then I'm going to add or subtract the c value to the other side by doing the opposite. So plus 10 to both sides. Okay, so if I do that, now I end up with x squared plus 8x, and then I'm going to leave a gap here and put equals 10. Okay, note here, if a is not equal to 1, so the number out front here was like, say, a 2 or a 4, 5, then you have to divide everything by that number. So if this was a 2, you'd have to divide this by 2 and by this by 2. It can get really messy pretty quickly, especially if the numbers don't divide nicely. All right, second step, find b divided by 2 squared. Okay, so this says take b, divide it by 2, whatever you get, square it. So b here is 8. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 2, which is 4. Then I'm going to square that. So 4 squared is equal to 16. Now, this number here is very important in completing the square. In fact, they can just ask you what this number is. They might ask you, what number do you add to both sides to complete the square? That is this number. That's 16. Okay, so step 3, it says complete the square by adding your value from step 2 to both sides of the equation. So what that looks like, if I take my equation from up here, remember where we left that gap here? We left a gap there. I'm going to add that 16 in that spot. And then whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other. Okay, so you might want to actually just draw a line on both sides right away. Then you can remember to add to both sides. All right, step 4 says to factor. Now, factoring here should not be very difficult. It's always going to look the same. So it's going to be the parentheses squared and then equals. This you just combine together. So 10 plus 16 is 26. All right, so the side we got to factor. The format's always going to be the same. It's going to be x, and then whatever this sign is, it's going to be the same. Okay, and then whatever number up top here you got when you did b divided by 2, so 4, that is my number that's going to go inside. Another way to think of it, what times what was 16? 4 times 4 is 16. So your final factored form is x plus 4 squared equals 26. This is as far as you need to get. Okay, after that, you would take the square root like we did the other day and solve. So let's look down at example 1. It asks what value of c makes it a perfect square trinomial. Okay, this up here, the x squared plus 4 squared, that is a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to do the same process. So step 2 and 3, and that'll give me my answer. So to make a perfect square trinomial, I would take 18 divided by 2, which is 9, and then 9 squared is 81. So 81 is my answer for C. It would make it a perfect square trinomial. Pause the video, try practice 1. All right, so for practice 1, I have my middle term, which is negative 14. I divide that by 2, which is negative 7. Now that I have negative 7, I square it. A negative times a negative is still a positive, so 7 times 7 is 49. So you should have got 49 to make C a perfect square trinomial. All right, example 2. This says to find the solutions, but we are just going to turn this into our factored form. Okay, so if you remember, back up in step 1, it says if a is not equal 1, then you must divide everything by a. So this case, we have a is 2. So I need to divide everything by 2 before we even begin. So I get x squared minus 8x plus 11. I don't really need to worry about this y. This is just telling me that it's the function. Okay, so next I'm going to set it equal to 0 and bring the 11 over by subtracting it. Okay, opposite of add. I'm left with x squared minus 8x equals negative 11. Notice I left my gap again, so I'm going to draw the line. I can remember to do it on both sides. Okay, now I got to figure out what to add to both sides. So take half of 8. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 16. Combine this side together, I end up with 5. And this side is going to be my pattern again. So x, this symbol is minus, so minus. And then my number over here, I already have the minus for the negative, so it's still going to just be 4. Okay, and then it's squared. There's my final answer for what we need today. I'm not worried about my solutions. I am more worried about the factored form. Okay, so try practice 2. Again, instead of finding the zeros, I want you to put what is the factored form for this. All right, so let's quick check. So we have the factored form here. We have x squared minus 6x minus 8. So I'm going to set that equal to 0. Sorry. Okay, bring this over. Add 8, add 8. I end up with x squared minus 6x. Leave my gap, equals 8. Add the same number. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. My final form, this becomes 17. X squared plus or minus 6x plus 9 will become x minus and then 3, because that number was 3 squared. So this is our final factored form.